All right. Welcome, everybody, to our Salesforce Developers AMA for December 2022. And of course, many of you will realize that this is not our normal week. Normally, we do the AMA on the final week of the month. But due to the different holidays and time off that people take during this particular time of year, we decided to bump it up by a couple of weeks. So I'm very excited about our topic today, which is the Salesforce CLI. But before we get started, I do have a couple of things that we need to take care of, starting with, of course, our forward-looking statement. Many of you who have seen a Salesforce presentation before know what this is all about. But if you've never seen this before, all this is saying is simply, please make your purchasing decisions based on features and functionality that are currently generally available in Salesforce. And that's pretty much it. I know it's a lot of words for just that short statement, but that is the gist of what we're talking about here. And of course, before we get started, we want to remind everybody about the Trailblazer community. You can actually join us, Salesforce developers, on the Trailblazer community at www.salesforce.com/dev-community. That's our very own Trailblazer community group, where you can go and ask questions. You can actually speak to us, those of us on the developer relations team, and you can, of course, connect with other developers in the Salesforce community. And if you're posting on there specifically about the AMA today, or if you want to use it on any of your other social channels, please use the #SFDevsAMA hashtag for anything about the Ask Me Anything today. So, with all of that taken care of, I am super, super excited to introduce you to our guests. Our guests today are Pooja Redivari, who is product manager for the Salesforce CLI. And we also have Pete Hale, who is one of the engineers for the Salesforce CLI. These are going to be our experts today that we're going to be asking you, that you're going to be asking your questions to. And to kick things off, let me just have each of them do brief introductions and a little bit of background about themselves. Pooja, you want to start?
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep, off you go, Pooja.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. I'm Pooja Redivari, Product Manager for the Salesforce CLI, a part of the Platform Developer Services and Experiences product team here at Salesforce. I'm really looking forward to talking to you all about the Salesforce CLI today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Pete Hale. I'm a software engineer at Salesforce, and I've been working with this product for a number of years, 6 or 7 now, I think. So I'm looking forward to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Fantastic. And to before we actually get to any questions, Pooja actually, and look at that. I had everything all set and we're in an infinity screen. Just so give me one moment and I'm going to get this fixed so that we actually see the right screen. So it'll take me one moment to do that, however. All right, give me 1 second. My apologies for the technical difficulties. I had things all set up, or so I thought, and it turns out that I had not. So once I've done that and move this over here and done that, I should be able to get us going there. All right. A little bit kludgy, a little bit fiddly, but we're back. So Pooja, if you want to go ahead and kick off your presentation.
Sure. Can you pull up the slides, Peter? Thank you. So one of the things that we kept hearing a lot from most of you about a year ago is around how the reliability of the CLI is a big problem. And that is something that we constantly keep hearing. And I do want to take some time today to talk to you about all the enhancements that we have done as a team to help provide you all with a great, reliable CLI experience and have you experience a command line tool that you all can trust. So today, let's look at some of the things that we have done from an architectural standpoint to help with the reliability of the CLI. Can we go to the next one,
Yep,
Peter?
I'm there. I think you're looking at the YouTube stream, so there's about a 45-second delay. So you're there.
Thank you. So as you may know, what we have been dealing with in the past is a monolithic code base, what we call as the tool belt internally. This is the Salesforce CLI, as you all know, is made up of many topics and commands that are not built or maintained just by the platform CLI team. As a number of features supported in the CLI kind of expand, we are not in a position to sustain all the enhancements that are coming into the CLI. And we cannot continue to work in a monolithic architecture. So what we did is we started breaking up the tool belt, which is our monolithic code base, into plugins. We embarked on the plugin model or the plugin architecture that Oak Cliff provides and started breaking down our commands and grouping them into individual plugins. So on the next slide, it really shows how the tool belt is built on the Oak Cliff framework. And if you can keep going through the other slides, yep. Peter, it really shows how we've broken down these into plugins, and we as a CLI team bring these plugins together to kind of provide you with the core Salesforce CLI experience. And we just did not stop there, right? There are some other plugins that are sister teams here at Salesforce build, and you still get them in your Salesforce CLI ecosystem. The only thing that you have to do if you want to run a command is to install that particular plugin and start using those. And we did not stop at that. We have given that power back in your hands. And you can build your own plugin, and you really do not have to wait for us to build that functionality for you. And that's the power of federation you can experience with the CLI. And these orange pieces or the blocks that you see here are an example of how you can build a custom plugin by either leveraging what we've already built or leveraging our APIs directly. So this is the power that we are giving in your hands. So for those of you that have tried and built your own plugins, thank you so much. We are looking for feedback too on how we can improve this whole plugin experience for you. Do reach out to us if you have thoughts on that. With that said, if we go to the next slide, that really talks about how we are taking an approach towards building a much more reliable experience for you. And these are some of the things that we have done from an architectural standpoint. The first, as we just talked about, is around plugins and embarking on the plugin architecture. It really gives better control over releasing, it's easier to maintain, and it also helps automate release notes for all of you. The second aspect or the second pillar that we have embarked on is by building more libraries or shared libraries. The way we approach this is we have abstracted out all the common functionality and made some libraries that can now be shared across other tools as well. Like if it's not just the CLI that's using these libraries. So it is also our other tools like VS Code extensions or Code Builder that are leveraging these libraries directly so that you get to see a consistent experience across the board, irrespective of the tool you use. And finally, we are almost at being 100% open source. We want to build in the open so that we can get faster feedback and it ensures trust and transparency with all of you. And this is all from an architectural standpoint. We did not stop at this. From an engineering standpoint, we also added better testing. We introduced what's called NUTS. NUTS are a short form of not unit tests. So anything that's, it could be an integration test, end-to-end testing, smoke tests. We added a lot more testing, not just for the plugins, but actually at the command level libraries. Every single aspect we're able to test end to end so that it helps with the reliability of our solution. And we are providing the same test kit that you can also leverage to write tests for your own plugins if you choose to. With that, I think we've come a long way from a reliability standpoint. I'm sure there are other pieces to it that we'll be continuing to work on, and you will continue to see the enhancements coming your way from a reliability standpoint. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Pooja, for going through that. I have to say, I've been a Salesforce CLI user from the start, and it's great to see the evolution of what to me has become such an amazing tool. So, with that, enough of us talking. I think it's great for us to get to one of the questions. The first question we have from our community. So. This was a question that came up on Twitter, coincidentally, just a couple of days ago from Rob Cowell, who's a developer where I live here in the UK. And his question is, what's the difference between the SFDX CLI and the SF CLI? Also, why do we need both? So, Pooja, Pete, which of you would like to tackle which part of that?
I can get started, if that's okay, Pete, and maybe have you add to it too if I miss something. Cool. So let me give you a little bit of background on that. That's a great question, to be honest, because that is very relevant to what we are working on currently. And it's a great opportunity for us to share why we have two CLIs and the reasoning behind what's in it. So about 2 years ago, the CLI team embarked on the unification initiative with a vision to unify the various CLIs and the CLI experiences across the Salesforce platform. So we announced the next evolution of the Salesforce CLI with a new executable called SF, which is also being referred to as the unified CLI. Today, when you install the Salesforce CLI, you get two interoperable CLIs. One is called SFDX, which is the current version of the CLI that you all use, and the other is called SF, or the Unified CLI. Building SF as a separate CLI at that time gave us an opportunity to rethink how the CLI experience is and redesign it from scratch to better address your DevOps needs. With SF as a separate CLI, we were able to design, test, and launch not only like a new command structure for cross-cloud development, but also a lot of other friendly, performant, and intuitive CLI functionality without really interrupting your day-to-day and current workflows. And that was the main reason why we introduced yet another CLI at that point in time. And thanks to those of you that have given us feedback on SF and all the functionality that we've introduced there. So we are in the process of going from 2 CLIs to 1. And that is what you'll hear more coming from us in the form of blog posts and announcements going into the next year. So right now, we are looking at moving from 2 to 1, and that's our goal. So, and we are in the process of reducing the time in which these two executables or these two CLIs coexist. Was that helpful? Pete, would you like to add something?
The only thing I would add is that both of these CLIs are using the same set of core libraries that we just to provide the same functionality across both when there's a command that might exist in both but in different forms. For example, the ability to create a scratch org exists in both SFDX and SF. The command names are quite different, but the libraries that are used to actually create that scratch org is exactly the same. So the SF is more about changing the way we look at commands, the way the commands are structured. And, it's, as Pooja said, it was a greenfield development, which allowed us to experiment with a lot of different ways to change the way the CLI behaves. So it's, I look forward to moving toward one, I think as everybody else does, and we'll reap the benefits of.
And just a call out to those that have not tried out SF, please go and try it out yourself. There is a lot of functionality and enhancements that we have introduced there. For instance, it has improved typing experience. This CLI, the SF CLI, is taxonomy free. What that means is the order in which you write your command does not really matter. It is smart enough to understand that and process the command for you. We've introduced better search, and the flags, the readability of the flags has improved a lot. The help messages have become much better than what you see in SFDX. And please go ahead and try it out.
Yeah, I have to say, my experience with I'm not writing a lot of code these days, but my little bit of experience with SF, I do like some of the usability features and that sort of thing. So I'm excited to see that progress. Let's move on to the next question here, and I think some of this is a little bit about the project, the sort of default project when you start to do development, but I think there may be some Salesforce CLI nuggets in here as well. This is from Diefre Quadros. Large files lead to a lot of conflicts. Any plans for SFDX project.json file to become more maintainable? In our org, currently we have 62 packages. Probably next year we will reach 100. Needing to specify the entire dependency tree for every package is very verbose and cumbersome. So yeah, some of it's definitely a little bit more about like the actual project, and I don't know if that's directly related to the work that Pooja and Pete do, but maybe some of a little bit in there could be related to the command line. Pooja, Pete, what do you think?
Yeah, I can appreciate the fact that the size of the file is becoming unmanageable. As any single file or any single object that we deal with grows and grows, it becomes more and more difficult to deal with. I would suggest going and filing an issue on our issues website in order for us to take a look at what the options might be to solve this issue. The packaging portion of the project belongs to one of our sister teams, and we would love to have a conversation with them to see how we might be able to make this a little more manageable for you.
Excellent. Great. Sounds good. And the next one, again, I think this will be one of those. I think we're going to get a shout out to one of the other tools that maybe lives alongside of Salesforce CLI. When are we expecting UI for CI/CD? Oh, sorry, and that's from Ragul M.
So if the question is around having an equivalent of the command line in the form of a UI for DevOps, that is
I think so, yeah.
what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have announced, and I think DevOps Center is GA as of this week. That is something we would encourage you to start looking into. You can think of it as yet another tool for your teams to work with in the DevOps phases of the different DevOps lifecycle. You can think of that as a UI equivalent of the CLI when it comes to managing the various phases of DevOps.
And I think this is one of those maybe teachable moments, because I've heard if something like DevOps Center like had specific commands that you were sort of accessing via a CLI, would that be kind of like what you showed in that diagram where you have these different building blocks that go into that? Yeah, is that kind of how that relationship that you're trying to illustrate there works?
Yes, that's a great example. I know Pete has been working directly on that, so I'll have him talk a little bit about the DevOps Center plugin, the CLI plugin too.
Yeah, I've been partnering with that team to get their work into the CLI. I think it's progressing well, and look forward to actually having it bundled up with the CLI or as an independent plugin we can install. Yeah, we're very excited about seeing their work appear, the customers in the CLI.
Yeah, and to me, even working for Salesforce, it was a bit of a revelation when I learned, when you have sort of this common service provider tool like the Salesforce CLI, that when you talk to the Salesforce CLI team, be that the product team or the engineering team, they aren't necessarily the one building that plugin. It's very collaborative, the way that everything seems to be structured, based on both what you reflected here, but then also as I've learned the longer I've been with Salesforce. So we have another question from Rob Cowell. Will the CLI eventually incorporate functionality to make it easier to work with CPQ and/or industries, formerly velocity implementations? So again, that's one of those like partner team relationships. But any thoughts on that, Pooja?
Yeah, absolutely. We do want to look into those. I mean, one of the things that we talked about with SF and the goal being unification, right? So unifying the CLI experiences across Salesforce. And as part of that, we are looking at the various other CLI experiences and how we can come together so that our users, any Salesforce developer working within the Salesforce ecosystem, will have the same experience or will be able to have a seamless experience of working with the CLI, whether it's directly using SFDX CLI or tomorrow if it's some other CLI, for example, working with industries and other teams that have their own CLI experiences, and bringing them together is one of our goals as part of unification.
That makes a lot of sense. And this actually brings up a question that I've sort of had, like how do you name things when you're building products for developers? I'm guessing going from SFDX to SF was really to reflect that whole unified nature, that this was going to be the one plugin across the whole Salesforce developer ecosystem. Is that right?
Right. I mean, there were two aspects to it, right? So when I first joined the team and I was doing a bunch of user interviews, there was a lot of mentions around SFDX, and I had to go back and say, what do you mean by SFDX? A lot of people refer to the Salesforce CLI as SFDX, while some some people also refer to package-based development as part of the SFDX term. So it was a little confusing. And we also said, okay, we have embarked on this journey of unification, and would that make sense to kind of like have a better name for our CLI? And SF was one of the things that came up because, like you said, Peter, it's about unifying the various experiences across Salesforce development, right? So not just the core SFDX CLI experience that you see today, but if we have other CLIs, can we bring those experiences together and unify them? And SF seemed to be the best term or phrase we could think about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, I'm watching the chat here, and Rob, of course, brings in the one CLI to bind them all. Nice Lord of the Rings shout out there, Rob. So well done to you. Lovely. All right. So moving on to our next question from Nitesh K. We have built a CI/CD script using SFDX commands for creation of scratch orgs and for deployment between sandboxes. We are still using 7.137 version CLI. Our script keeps breaking because of warning messages we get as output while running any SFDX scripts to update to the latest version. How to avoid this issue? So that's interesting. So running on an old version, but not having difficulties getting it updated. Pete, that sounds like it might be a question for you.
Yeah, it's not knowing the nature of the warning. There's several warnings that come out of SFDX. Some are issued by Node itself. Some of those are unavoidable. The Node one, there's an environment variable you can set to suppress Node warnings. And there's the warnings from the application. And I think what this is leading to is that somewhere in one of the plugins, there's a warning message being emitted, but it's not doing it in a standard way. One of the things we have in our library is the ability to collect and report on warnings when we're running with a JSON response. So this sounds like one of those cases where the customer's running in CI/CD where we typically use JSON to examine the results of the command, but an errant message that's coming to the console can break the parsing of JSON once the command's finished. So I would encourage this customer to raise an issue on our CLI issues page in GitHub with the details of this and see if we can get it fixed for them.
Fantastic. That's great advice. And hopefully one of our helpers on the stream here, maybe they can ping that URL either into the chat, or we might post it out to the community group after the call. All right. Lovely to see all the discussion going on. So that's fantastic. And next question, again from Diefre Quadros. What is the plan for commands that keep failing due to network issues? Pooling mechanism was for build deployment, but we still noted commands failing everywhere, e.g. package install. So I don't know, that's an interesting architecture question. Is there some additional resilience that can be sort of brought to the command line in cases of network issues?
Yeah, we've been working on trying to detect and recover from specific network type of drop connections or other common ones, and we're trying to improve that set of well-known network interruptions and build that resiliency into the library. So yeah, without knowing exactly which one, I don't know if it's on our set of objectives that we have been currently working on. But if the customer will make that known to us, we'll have a look and see if it falls into a category where we actually can recover from like the package install when it's waiting for the install. That seems like one that could be recovered from, since the client is controlling the connection. If there's a streaming error that is actually a pub sub from the app server, there may not be something that we can do to recover that same stream. So it's going to have to be case by case.
Yeah, no, for sure. It can always be difficult to know exactly what that's coming from, but it does sound like there's some work going on to improve to make it a little bit more network resilient. So moving to a question again, an adjacent question from Ragul M. Can you build a VS Code extension for the CLI? Reason, very difficult for managed package history and other stuff. So Ragul, it sounds like what you're asking is, can you have a VS Code extension invoke the Salesforce CLI? And I think I know the answer to that question, but I'm going to toss it over to Pooja. Pooja, right now you are muted, so make sure you unmute yourself. We're having some sound issues with Pooja, so let me see. All right. I'm not hearing Pooja at the moment, so Pete, I'm wondering if maybe you want. Do you feel comfortable trying to answer that question? How can you?
VS Code, the framework for. Say again.
No, go ahead.
Okay. The VS Code is those extensions is owned by another team. If given the specifications, what the customer would like, they could ask that team. I think they maintain their own issues on the platform development GitHub. We can provide that link. But if the customer can express exactly what they need for these different package histories, then we could possibly take a look at or asking that team to fulfill that.
Yeah, and the thing that I know it's a really good question. The thing that I found interesting about that is that a lot of what those VS Code extensions do is, in fact, to go out and invoke the Salesforce CLI. The CLI is kind of the foundational element to how we work with a Salesforce org as developers, right? And so, but if you want an easier way to invoke that, that's where Visual Studio Code comes in, and you can use the command palette. Perhaps Ragul was thinking of something that's more sort of point and click in Visual Studio Code. I'm not too sure. But suffice to say, that's exactly what the the Visual Studio Code does, is invoke the Salesforce CLI. Moving on to Ravi Narayanan. The CLI has the potential to create more electron-based apps and can ease the day for development. Any plans of having App Exchange for electron-based apps? So, Ravi, that's a really interesting question, and I didn't have a chance to read it ahead of time. What I would say is that actually neither of my experts today are experts on where the direction of App Exchange is going to be going, unfortunately. So what I would suggest is I know that there's active discussion in Trailblazer community on the part of the App Exchange team. I believe the partner portal is still active as of today, although I think there is some plans to move that eventually. But definitely reach out to your App Exchange technical evangelist on what their roadmap is for what new apps may be able to be submitted to App Exchange. All right. Moving on. Another question from next question is from Jorgen Stratman, or it could be Jorgen Stratman. Since I don't know where you're from, I'm not sure if that's a J from Germany or from like a Nordic country, or J from somebody who lives in the States. But is the introduction of job IDs with async requests in SF a possible method to resolve network issues? So it sounds like we have a helper on the line to see if this is something that could be helpful to resolve that issue that was brought up earlier. Who was that? Was that by Dayfree? Yeah, that was by Dayfree.
Yeah, these the job IDs were specifically captured to be able to do async. And for those in SF that are familiar with it, the sandbox create and retro create commands, they do allow for async with then the ability to resume checking on the status of that particular work. Yes, it's a possible solution to resolve network issues if we have some sort of ID to reconnect to and reestablish the progress. But in this case, it's a polling request to check on status, so we're in full control. Once again, if there's something that we're on a push and we break a network connection, they're recovering those is a little more difficult.
Cool. That's really interesting. So thanks for sharing that. Next question from Rob Cowell. How does the new unified CLI handle parallelism? Can you spawn multiple instances for a multi-cloud operation to accelerate delivery? And I assume by delivery you mean actually getting your code or the artifacts that you're working with to their server, wherever that might be.
Right, and I think that Rob is talking about we have the deploy set of commands, and the question is how do we handle those in parallel? The SF deploy command will take a look and see what's configured into the environment that we have, and given that the parallelism is handled naturally by the dispatch mechanism, we're using Oak hooks to dispatch the request to the underlying subsystems, and those are those will resolve on their own and report back when they're finished, and then the ultimate report comes back when all of them are finished. So we do try to use parallelism when we can to improve performance, and we will continue to do so.
Yeah, just to add to that, I don't know if you can hear me okay now. Has this been resolved? Okay.
I can hear you now.
Just to add to that, a quick call out. If you haven't played around with the SF deploy command, I do encourage you to try that out, because it's a completely different experience. It automatically tells you what all artifacts you have that are deployable and the targets that they can be deployed to. And we'd love to hear your feedback too on that. Thanks.
Fantastic. Great answers. And so again, the chat is looking great. There's someone named Roshan who wants to join Salesforce. Well, I'm sure we'd love to have you, Roshan. Hopefully someday we can, there'll be an opportunity for someone of whatever you do. So thanks for saying that. And Jürgen, thanks for confirming that my gut instinct was right. So appreciate that. Moving on to the next question, again from Rob Cowell. Should we continue to use SFDX for production use as of today then?
Hey, Rob, there will be a lot of announcements coming pretty soon. We are in the process of figuring out how we go from 2 CLIs to one. We are evaluating the options, and we want to make sure whatever we come up with is the most elegant and the seamless solution for all of you, so that we end up doing a lot of work and keep the actions or the work that you might have to do for the migration minimal. So we are in the process of evaluating our options. You will hear more on that. For now, yes, SFDX. Is what you will continue to use. And you will hear more from us pretty soon.
Fantastic. All right, Dayfree is promising that this is the last question. How did the new source tracking impact performance? So I'm assuming you mean performance of the command line itself when using the new source tracking. I'm not sure who to ask that one to. It's maybe Pete.
Yeah.
Would you be more?
I'll take a stab
All
at
right,
it.
sounds
It's,
good.
the source tracking is, for those who don't know, it's the ability to keep track of changes in my local workspace against a particular scratch work that I'm working against. The source tracking commands are actually dependent upon a library called source deploy retrieve, which is maintained by another team. Now, over the last year or so, they have did a lot of work to specifically improve the performance of it's what turns out to be a metadata deploy up to a particular org. Performance is multifaceted. We have the work that we can do on the client side to try to speed things up in processing the set of files that we have to deal with in metadata deploy. And then there's also the server side, which is an API call into the metadata REST interfaces or SOAP, depending on what the choice the customer makes. So as you can appreciate, that we're trying to do the best we can to get the performance up. And if there's any significant performance problems on the customer side, we have to lean on that team and their ability to track down and solve those particular performance issues. I think overall, the performance for the source tracking set of commands has improved since we adopted the source deploy retrieve library, and hopefully it just continues to get better.
Excellent. Great question. Now the next one. So Dayfree, you said last question last time, but here's another one. And actually, I'm for this one. I'm not sure that we're gonna get an answer for you, but I'll put it out there, and we'll see where we get with this. Asking, how can I build a permission set based on metadata in a specific directory? Could you point to which classes, libs, should I use? I actually have some questions about that myself. It sounds like maybe you're asking about building a permission set like locally in your local drive without having to be on the server. Anyway, so I have a lot of questions about that question myself, but I don't know, Pooja, Pete, anything on that one? Or maybe we should move on to the next question. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll just say real quick that I think what the customer's looking for is let me put the permission set anywhere I want, and then it applies to those objects that it's contained with, rather than putting it into a folder unto itself. Any further than that, then I'm probably not correct in that assumption.
Oh, that's an interesting thought. You mean as in like I should be able to put my permission set in whatever part of the folder structure?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that one. Let's move on to the next, which is from Rob Cowell. I see metadata capabilities in SF CLI is beta. Where can we find a roadmap/timeline?
Sure. I will talk a little bit about what's coming at a very high level towards the end of this call, but if you're interested in specific timelines, I would say the best place is our release notes. We sometimes talk about what's coming, and yeah, just stay tuned for more information on that. But if you have any other specific timeline questions, do reach out to me. Happy to chat with you about those. I mean, at this point in time, we have a high-level roadmap that I'll talk to you about towards the end of this call.
And actually, that brings up, I think, one of the coolest features of the SF CLI, which is when do you see your release notes?
So I believe you're talking about the what's new command, Peter. Is that the thing? Yes. So we did introduce an embedded what's new right into the CLI itself, and we're quite excited about that functionality. And I've heard good reviews on that too. So you don't have to go to the release notes to understand or know more about what is in the latest release or what is in one of the earlier releases if you have the release number. It's a direct command through the CLI that you can just key in to know what's new with the latest, or if you want to give a specific release number, it will also give you the release notes from that particular release. So it is our way of bringing the release notes to your natural workspace, which is the CLI, and we are looking at improving that experience too.
Well, and the thing I was also thinking
Thanks
of
for bringing
is,
that up.
yeah, is if I just do SFDX update, if an update happens, I see the release notes, right?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, so I love that right there, right then and there, as I'm using it, I'm going to get a little reminder of what can I expect to see now that I've done my update. So, coming from Patel Nilkanth, should we go for App Exchange solution for API integration, or should we go completely DIY? Patel, thank you so much for bringing your question to our AMA today, but I'm going to say that I don't think this is the right question for our experts tonight. I should say tonight. That's where I am in the UK. But again, App Exchange do have their technical evangelist team who are available, I know, through the partner community and also through Trailblazer community. So I definitely look about for some places where you can connect with them and ask some questions, or also connect with other members of the community who might have already built App Exchange solutions themselves, and they may have some good advice for you. Moving on to Pavel Herbacek, I'm going to say. That's my best take on that particular name. SF commands run from within an SFDX project. SFDX commands are not limited this way. Why the difference when they both use the same core libraries? I think that may be a little bit of a misperception, but again, I'll maybe see if Pete or Pooja can answer that.
Typically, this exists both in the SF and SFDX. If a command requires that it be inside an SFDX project, it will let you know that you're not in the right space to do this. If there are SF commands that are behaving like that and shouldn't, then that's something we need to have a look at. Many of the commands that are currently inside of SF were kind of focused on things that require projects. So I would think that what you're seeing is probably due to the number of commands that are available currently in SF versus SFDX.
Yeah, and I would assume, and I'm okay. I'll admit I'm having trouble adjusting to using the new SF command line. I'm so ingrained with the SFDX as a command line. But if there is one to create a new project, which I believe there is on SF, that would have to run outside of your Salesforce project, wouldn't it, in order to actually generate a new project, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think maybe that's maybe a little bit of a misperception, but Pavel, for sure, if you are seeing something, just as Pete said, a great place to go and get some input from the team is in their GitHub repo to go in and create an issue there. So thanks for asking that.
Yes, it's just to add to
Yeah,
that,
you bet.
one of the coolest things about the two CLIs we have are that they are interoperable, and that is one of the things that we were super excited about, because whether I'm writing an SFDX command or an SF command, I don't have to go and switch to a completely different CLI. These two are interoperable, and you can go get to each of those from the same place, from the same CLI.
And I saw that I'd seen some internal communication about that, but I saw that was actually in a recent set of release notes. So that has been introduced to the SFDX command, that you can basically run your SF command from SFDX and vice versa. So that's really cool, which actually sort of supersedes Rob's comment there, which I really appreciate the help, Rob. Always from one person to another, alias SFDX to SF and force yourself to learn it. Yeah, that would definitely be, a little bit of a tough love on myself, maybe. But it sounds like that wouldn't even work, because I could still use it either way. So nicely done. So next question from Rob Cowell is, strategically, is the intent for the CLI to lean in hard on the packaging model more than other models? So again, there's a little bit of this story is going to live in that packaging team, but Pooja, really interested to hear what your thoughts are on that. Are we not hearing Pooja again? No, not hearing. And I think we just lost Pooja. So
I think she may disconnected too here. I can try.
All right, take a stab at it, Pete.
CLI, SFDX, the CLI, was focused strongly on the ISV development model, developing Salesforce packages for installation, and we would have to understand what the other models might be. Are there going to be other organizations within Salesforce that come up and say, we have this other, to use corollary to packaging, another distribution model that we want to support? So that would be the job of that team, or maybe in collaboration with the CLI team, to build the commands to support that new model. The packaging model is not ingrained in CLI. It's just another plugin that supports packaging.
Great. Excellent. So we're running a little shy on time, and I have a couple more questions and a couple of wrap-up slides to go through as well. So I'm going to take the next question from John Daniel. And Pete, I think you might be able to answer this one. When will the SFDX plugin generator generate new custom CLI plugins on the latest Oak Cliff core version and the latest Salesforce CLI core version? Also, when will the documentation be updated? So that's a good question.
The latest version of core, separate library, these are all as part of our maintenance on repositories. We are continually running updates on the dependencies that we have. In the generators themselves, we use templates that are used to produce the code. So those might lag a little bit between the most recent versions of Oak Cliff Core and Salesforce Core. Documentation to be updated. I'm not sure on that one, but if there's an issue with, if we're lagging too far behind, you feel that we need to bump those up more frequently, then well, I'll take that back to the team.
Sorry, can you hear me okay now?
Yes, yep.
Sorry,
No
difficulties
problem.
on and off.
Not a problem. All right. So looking at the time, I know that there's a few final words that Pooja wants to go through just to sort of cover off what's coming. So let me get my view. There we go. Managed to get it to the right screen this time. That's a big improvement from the Infinity screen. So Pooja, do you want to take us out and talk about what's coming? And just let me know when to advance the slides.
Sure. Yeah, so quickly from what's coming angle, we are going to be investing time into the plugin developer experience. For those of you that have tried it out, built plugins, thank you so much. We do appreciate you doing that, and we do want to get your feedback too on how that's been working for you. We will continue to work on the various plugin experiences and make it as seamless as possible for all of you to build your own plugins. And the second aspect to it is around the unified CLI experience. We talked about having two CLIs currently, and we are in the process of going from 2 to 1. We do want to make that easy and bring parity between the two and make sure the steps that are involved in the migration are kept to a minimal and make that whole experience seamless for our end users. And finally, the third thing is around reliability. As we talked about in this call, like towards the beginning of the session, we spoke about all the reliability enhancements that we've already done, and that is something that's not going to stop. So we're going to continue to invest time and effort into improving the reliability of our platform and the overall experience for you. With that, I think we can move to the next slide.
Yep.
That talks about how you can help us help you better.
Yep, we have that up.
Cool. Yeah, so I mean, these are just different things that you can do to engage with us. We are looking for user feedback, so happy to schedule some time if you're interested with our UX team and the product team to understand more about where your pain points are and how we can improve that experience for you. And here's a link to our release notes. So for updates, please stay tuned. And as Pete kept mentioning throughout this session, we do have an issues only GitHub repository where our team is constantly looking at it from a daily basis. So it's something that you can leverage and start putting in issues that you may see or any anything that you want to talk to us about from a CLI angle. With that, I'd like to thank you all for your time. And again, sorry about the on and off from a technical difficulties today, but yeah.
You know, it's not an AMA without just if it's not, if there aren't any problems, it's not live, right? So this was fantastic. I had a wonderful time talking to you, Pooja and Pete. Thanks for coming by and sharing all that you've shared with our developers. I'm excited to see where things are going. Every once in a while, Salesforce makes one of these massive shifts of technology for us developers where you see them building the new house on top of the old house as they're demolishing the old house. And this is like exactly one of those times with what's going on with the unified CLI. So thanks everybody for your patience with our little technical issues. Thank you for joining. Thanks to our team who have given us amazing support to make this possible and get us reconnected and take care of our last minute issues. And with that, I'd just like to say, have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday, wherever you are. Thanks very much.